friends, hope you all are fine in the current scenario and staying safely. So guys, Shweta Dash is welcoming you at the Pharmacy Crash Course Division in the Knowledge Club online. You know, I am coming with the various types of subjects, topics in medical, pharmacy and life science division one by one only for you in medicine form. So, stay tuned. In previous lecture, we studied the anatomy of the heart, pulse, surface and borders. I promise that I will come with the topic, the supplying of the blood into the heart. Today, I came with this topic and this is the last chapter of the anatomy of the heart. The entire body must be supplied with nutrients and oxygen via the circulatory system, and the heart is no exception. The coronary circulation refers to the vessels that supply and drain the heart. Coronary arteries are named as such due to the way they encircle the heart, much like a crown. This article will outline the naming, distribution and the clinical relevance of the vessels into the coronary circulation. So, don't skip the lecture. If you skip the lecture, you can miss valuable points for your exam. Stay tuned up to the end. Blood flows in and out of the heart every second of your life, and some of that blood needs to supply the cells of the heart itself with oxygen and nutrients. The coronary arteries supply oxygenated blood to the heart, while cardiac veins return deoxygenated blood to the pulmonary circulation loop. I am starting with the part, the coronary arteries. Two large coronary arteries and their many branches supply blood to the heart. Large arteries enter the heart on the left and right at the top. They are called the left and right coronary arteries because they sit atop and encircle the heart, looking like a crown. The right coronary artery and its two major branches, the marginal artery and the posterior interventricular artery, primarily supply the right atrium and ventricle with oxygenated blood and nutrients. The left coronary artery and its two branches, the anterior descending coronary artery and the left circumflex coronary artery, that primarily supply the left atrium and ventricle with oxygenated blood and nutrients. The left coronary artery, called the LCA, initially branches to yield the left anterior descending LAD, also called the anterior interventricular artery. The LCA also gives off the left marginal artery LMA and the left circumflex artery CX. In 20 to 25% of individuals, the left circumflex artery contributes to the posterior interventricular artery PLV. The right coronary artery RCA branches to form the right marginal artery RMA anteriorly. In 80 to 85% of individuals, it also branches into the posterior interventricular artery PLV posteriorly. Then come to the point, the distribution of the coronary arteries. In general, the area of the heart which an artery passes over will be the area that it perfuses. The following describes the anatomical course of the coronary arteries. The RCA passes to the right of the pulmonary trunk and runs along the coronary sulcus before branching. The right marginal artery arises from the RCA and moves along the right and inferior border of the heart towards the apex. The RCA continues to the posterior surface of the heart, still running along the coronary sulcus. The posterior interventricular artery then arises from the RCA and follows the posterior interventricular groove towards the apex of the heart. The LCA passes between the left side of the pulmonary trunk and the left auricle. The LCA divides into the anterior interventricular branch and the circumflex branch. The anterior interventricular branch LAD follows the anterior interventricular groove towards the apex of the heart, where it continues on the posterior surface to anastomes with the posterior interventricular branch. The circumflex branch follows the coronary sulcus to the left border and onto the posterior surface of the heart. This gives rise to the left marginal branch, which follows the left border of the heart. Now come to the point, the cardiac veins. The cardiac venous system is similarly branched, often lying alongside the coronary arteries and their branches. Like everything about the heart, the cardiac venous system is composed of two parts, left and right. The left cardiac venous system, also called the coronary sinus system, receives deoxygenated blood from the most of the superficial veins of the heart. The right cardiac venous system is composed of veins that originate on the anterior and lateral surface of the right ventricle and drain directly into the right atrium. The smallest vessels, the venae cordi minimi, drain the myocardium directly into the atria and ventricles. Blood travels from the subendocardium into the Thebesian veins, which are small tributaries running throughout the myocardium. These in turn drain into larger veins that empty into the coronary sinus. The coronary sinus is the main vein of the heart, located on the posterior surface in the coronary sulcus, which runs between the left atrium and left ventricle. The sinus drains into the right atrium. Within the right atrium, the opening of the coronary sinus is located between the right atrioventricular orifice and the inferior vena cava orifice. There are 5 tributaries which drain into the coronary sinus. Number 1. The great cardiac vein is the main tributary. It originates at the apex of the heart and follows the anterior interventricular groove into the coronary sulcus and around the left side of the heart to join the coronary sinus. The small cardiac vein is also located on the anterior surface of the heart. This passes around the right side of the heart to join the coronary sinus. Number 3. Another vein which drains the right side of the heart is the middle cardiac vein. It is located on the posterior surface of the heart. The final 2 cardiac veins are also on the posterior surface of the heart. Those are, on the left posterior side is the left marginal vein, and in the center is the left posterior ventricular vein, which runs along the posterior interventricular sulcus to join the coronary sinus. Now we will look at your blood vessels. Your blood vessels comprise a network of channels through which your blood flows, but the vessels are not passive tubes. Rather, they are very active organs that, when functioning properly, assist the heart in circulating the blood and influence the blood's constitution. The innermost layer of the heart and of all vessels is continuous. It's one very convoluted sheet of epithelium. The vessels that take blood away from the heart are arteries. The vessels that bring blood towards the heart are veins. The smallest ones are called arterioles and venules respectively. Generally, arteries have veins of the same size running right alongside or near them, and they often have similar names. The arterial vessels, arteries and arterioles, decrease in diameter as they spread throughout the body. Eventually, they end in the capillaries the tiny vessels that connect the arterial and venous system. The venous vessels become increasingly larger as they cover on the heart. The smaller venules carry deoxygenated blood from a capillary to a vein, and the larger veins carry the deoxygenated blood from the venous back to heart. I am starting with the arteries part. Your arteries form a branching network of vessels with the main trunk called the aorta arising from the left ventricle and splitting immediately into the brachiocephalic trunk, left common carotid artery and left subclavian artery, which serve the head and upper limbs. The descending aorta, which serve the thoracic organs, abdominal organs and lower limbs, gives off several branches. One is the mesenteric arteries, the main arteries of the digestive tract. It also gives off two renal arteries, which supply the kidneys, and the common iliac arteries, which supply the pelvis and lower limbs. The arteries branch into smaller and smaller vessels, becoming arterioles that end in capillary vessels. Although an artery looks like a simple tube, the anatomy is complex. Arteries are made of three concentric layers of tissue around a space called the lumen, where the blood flows. The outside layer, the tunica externa, is a thick layer of connective tissue that supports the vessel and protects the inner layers from harm. The larger the artery, the thicker the connective tissue supporting it. However, this type of tissue can become stiff with age. The next layer is the tunica media. It is a thick wall of smooth muscle and elastic tissue. This layer expands and contracts with every pulse wave, means heartbeat, and sometimes it gives a little squeeze to increase the pressure and force the blood through. The inner layer, the tunica interna, is a single cell thick endothelial layer that lines the lumen and is continuous through all the organs of the circulatory system. The vascular endothelium, as this tissue is also called, is very active metabolically, releasing into the blood various substances that influence blood circulation and vascular health. It also specializes in transporting oxygen, nutrients and other substances from the blood flowing in the lumen to the smooth muscle fibers of the tunica media. Now cruising through the capillaries. After passing from the arteries and the arterioles, blood enters the capillaries, which lie between larger blood vessels in capillary beds. A capillary bed forms a bridge between the arterioles and the venules. Your capillaries are your smallest vessels. Only the single cell thick epithelial layer surrounds the lumen. The precapillary sphincters of the metatarsus can tighten or relax to control blood flow into the capillary bed. Lacking the structure and complexity of the arteries and veins, capillaries rely on simple diffusion to get their job done, moving oxygen and nutrients from the blood to the cells and waste materials from the cells to the blood. Capillary exchange is the term used to describe these processes. The capillaries come into close contact with all the cells of your tissues. At the end, near the arterioles, oxygen diffuses out of the red blood cells and nutrient molecules out of the plasma across the capillary membrane and directly into the tissue fluid. The oxygen and nutrients dissolved in the tissue fluid diffuse across the membranes of the adjacent cells. At the venule end, the carbon dioxide and other waste materials diffuse out of the tissue fluid and across the capillary membrane into the blood. Then the blood continues on through the venous system. and those waste materials are deposited in the proper location on their way out of the body. The carbon dioxide diffuses out of the bloodstream in the lungs, so it can be exhaled and thus removed from the body, while other metabolic waste is filtered through the kidney. Capillary beds are everywhere in your body, which is why you bleed anywhere that you even slightly cut your skin. Besides aiding in the exchange of gases and nutrients throughout your body, those are thermoregulation, means precapillary sphincters tighten when you are in a cold environment to prevent heat loss from the blood at the skin surface. Blood is then shunted from an arteriole directly to a venule through a nearby arteriovenous shunt. But when you are in a warm environment or you are producing heat through exertion, the precapillary sphincters relax, opening the capillary bed to blood flow and dispersing heat. Number 2 point, the blood pressure regulation. When blood pressure, the blood volume is low, the hormones that regulates blood pressure stimulates the precapillary sphincters to tighten, temporarily reducing the total volume of blood vessel system and thus raising the pressure. When blood pressure is high, they stimulate the sphincters to relax, increasing overall system volume and reducing pressure. Now we will visit the veins. Small veins cover the larger veins, all merging in the inferior vena cava and superior vena cava, the largest vessels in the venous system. These major veins return blood from below and above the heart respectively. The inferior vena cava lies to the right of and more or less parallel to the descending aorta. The superior vena cava lies to the right of and more or less parallel to the aorta. In the lower body, the internal iliac veins, which return blood from the pelvic organs, and the external iliac veins, which return blood from the lower extremities, converge into the common iliac veins. The renal veins return blood from the kidneys. Both these major veins flow into the inferior vena cava. Blood from the digestive tract travels in the hepatic portal vein to the liver. Specialized cells in the liver move glucose molecules from the blood into the storage. Phagocytic cells in the liver destroy bacterial cells that make it through the digestive process and remove toxins and other foreign materials from the blood. Blood exits the liver through the hepatic veins, which flow into the inferior vena cava. The inferior vena cava empties into the right atrium. Deoxygenated blood from the head and upper extremities drains into the brachiocephalic veins. The veins of the upper extremities, the ulnar veins, radial veins and subclavian veins also drain into the brachiocephalic veins. The jugular veins of the head and neck also drain into the brachiocephalic veins, which connect to the superior vena cava, which enters the right atrium. After the blood from the right atrium has been pumped into the right ventricle, it's pumped into the lungs where the blood is oxygenated and then it flows back to the heart in the pulmonary veins, the only veins that carry oxygenated red blood. Reminded, the pulmonary veins, the only veins that carry oxygenated red blood. Veins have a similar anatomy to arteries, although they tend to be wider and their walls thinner and less elastic. The tunica interna of a vein is also part of the continuous endothelial layer that lines the whole network. The tunica media has a layer of elastic tissue and smooth muscle, but this layer is much thinner in a vein than in an artery. The veins have virtually no blood pressure, and thus they don't need a thick muscle layer to vary the vessel diameter or withstand fluid pressure. The outermost tunica externa is the thickest layer of a vein because veins don't have a thick muscle layer to push blood through them. They depend on contraction of skeletal muscles to move blood back to the heart. As you move your arms, legs and torso, your muscle contract and those movements massage the blood through your veins. The blood moves through the vein a little bit at a time. The larger veins have valves that keep blood from flowing backward. The valves open in the direction that the blood is moving and then shut after the blood passes through the keep the blood heading towards the heart. So, this is the overall structure of the blood circulation into the heart and throughout the body. We completed the anatomy part of the heart. So, revise it thoroughly because this anatomical part will be used in the physiology part of the heart. From next episode, we will start the physiological part of the heart. Write me at the comment box how much you enjoyed today's episode. You can also write me the questions on anatomy part of the heart if you have any confusion. Before ending today's episode, if you like this video, please like, share and comment freely. Don't forget to subscribe our channel. If you already subscribed our channel, then thanks a lot. And after subscribing our channel, please click on the bell button. After clicking the bell button, you will get our valuable updates regularly. One announcement here. If you or your family members have interest in the Indian history, you can follow our another section, the Itihash Katha, where you can know the true stories of the Indian history, where the narrator name is Mr. Soumitra Banerjee. I am coming with another topic, the physiology part of the heart, very shortly. Till then,